A Court of Fairies and Fiction. Akafaf Girls Podcast. Hosts Mel Liv and Aka. A bookish theory and discussion podcast for the Akatar, Crescent City, and Tug series, as well as other romantasy books. Special episode, collaboration with the Literary Guillotine.
So I like what you said about everybody paying attention to just Feyre's perspective. And I think that this is, I don't know what do you think is the cause of this? Because when I see first person narration, we're always supposed to be skeptical of it. You're supposed to question the narrator.
I know.
And that's completely missing. Why do you think that is?
I don't know whether it's just that Akatar is, kind of the gateway into fantasy and people don't really know what they're supposed to be looking for, or if it's younger readers, or if it's just people who are just first getting into reading in general. I don't really know where it stems from, because then there's a lot of people that are readers that kind of take it the same way, and that confuses me a lot.
No, yeah, I understand. I totally get you. And you also said something very interesting, that Akatar is like this gateway to fantasy. And this is actually the first time that I've read fantasy. I'm not a fantasy reader typically. I'm more of a classics person.
Yeah.
And I don't say that like with any, whenever people say like, I only read the classics, I'm like, okay,
Classics.
I'm a jerk, right? Like, I don't say that to be like superior or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's just what I was raised reading. But I feel like I take what I know about how to read and like I apply it to Akatar, and like, I don't know. I can't imagine taking everything someone like Feyre says at face value. Especially, and let me ask you if you've ever thought about this. She
Probably.
right, like, because that's all we do is think about these books. She couldn't read the first like book and a half.
Yeah.
How is she writing the books? Have you ever thought about that? Like, it's from her perspective, but it's past tense.
Yeah.
So she's talking about it from somewhere in the distant future. Like, isn't this supposed to pique our interest? Like, we're supposed to say, how is that happening?
Yeah. Sarah basically just learns to read in book 2 with Rhys. The first thing that bothers me about that is that he doesn't bother to teach her her own name or her family's names or, anything actually helpful. But no, it's Rhys is handsome and Rhys is cunning and Rhys is this. So, like, that right off the bat is like, how narcissistic can you be, first of all? And then the second thing about that is literally within chapters, she's calling them morose drunks. I'm like, there is no way you know what that word means, Feyre. Where did you learn that word? Is he making you go through the dictionary and like quizzing you? Because there's no way you're calling someone a morose drunk right now.
That's actually so funny. I was a teacher for a really long time. And, with the rise of like AI and ChatGPT, when I have a 7th grader who starts using words like juxtaposition in their essay, I'm like I'd call them up to my desk and I'd be like, if you could use this in a sentence right now, I'll take it. Like, I know you're not. It's such a good point. But, you're also bringing up something really interesting, is that him teaching her how to read is for him. It's for him. I never thought about that.
Yeah, it is for him. It is so that she can recite the Book of Breathings, to do the spell, to whatever, call the cauldron, and all this stuff. It was never about Feyre, and that's what bothers me about their relationship, is that their relationship wasn't stemmed really off of him having feelings for her or loving her. It stemmed off of him, one, wanting to get revenge on Tamlin because he hates Tamlin, and he just taken her girl, works out, and 2, because he wanted to use her to quell the cauldron, which he knew Tamlin would never do because he loved her so much. He wouldn't use her that way. But Rhys would.
Yeah, like, instead of teaching her name, like you said, or how to read traffic signs, right? Like, stop, green means go. Like,
No fly zone.
Right, like, there's none of that safety concern, like how to read the word poison on a bottle, like, but that would be practical, right? But again, I don't think that Rhys I don't think he cares about Feyre, and that this is just more evidence. The circumstantial evidence that just piles up around this guy is is baffling to me, and I think that is one of the problems I have with so many people in the fandom.
They're blind to it. They're totally blind to it. The way that Feyre is, it's like this film goes over the eyes,
right? Like this veil of ignorance, right?
I'm going to believe Feyre, but Feyre's also getting the wool pulled over her eyes, so it's like you can't.
Well, I always say I feel like this is actually like meta writing, where Sarah J. Maas is proving just how powerful Rhys's Daimoni powers are.
Yes.
Like, I don't know.
Exactly.
It confuses me so much. And, there's always this question, like, would you be able to spot abuse if your friend or your sister, your mother, your aunt was being abused?
Yep.
And when I see all of the female defense around Rhysand, I ask myself, would you be able to spot your own abuse.
It's terrifying.
It is.
It happens too much in the real world too. I was telling you before we started filming how I had to go to like Dispatch Academy, and there was a heavy police portion of that, and so every year I have to go to this training where we have to get recertified every 365 days or less to be able to spot this type of abuse. Sexual, verbal, physical. We need to be able to spot the signs of this, like even on the phone, because I can't see them physically like an actual officer. I need to be able to pick it up just through the phone, through their words, through their tone, which is a lot harder. So when I'm reading these books and Farah is just saying all this stuff and Reese is making all the excuses, and I'm like, this is like being on the phone and trying to convince a battered woman to leave her husband who thinks that he's perfect or she did something wrong and it's her fault. And it's just horrific that the fandom as a whole can't see these things, because maybe it's just me and the training and how everything kicks in for me. And I know not everybody obviously has that sort of training and stuff, but it just bothers me that they can't even pick up any little clue of it when there's so much piled on.
No, I agree. And, I get a lot of criticisms on my page. As you've probably seen, I feel like my page is a war zone, 99%.
Yeah, it's a war.
But I have a lot of people who criticize me for the way that I view Resand. And, here's my thing. People say, you're sexist. And I'm like, I'm actually really not a sexist. And in my personal life, I don't actually, I have a whole blog and stuff dedicated to it. I think we follow each other on my regular Instagram too.
Yeah.
I'm actually a pretty domestic woman. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have 2 kids. I have another one on the way. And I don't mind saying that here because I'm actually announcing this on TikTok later.
Congrats again.
Thank you. I cook dinner from scratch every night for my husband. We have a very traditional thing going on here. But I chose it, right? And people are like, man, what must your husband think of you? I'm like, first of all, there is not a character in the Avatar books that I can compare my husband to. That's not me just gassing him. He's a good guy, okay? But I'm so confused by, it's not because I get mad that Feyre's a stay-at-home mom. You're just judging her because she wanted to be a mom. No, not what's going on. I breastfeed and I have diapers all over my house. That's not what's happening here.
For me, it's just the raging double standard, because if it was with Tamlin,
yes,
then they would be the sexist, and they would be saying, he made her do this, and he made her do this, and traditionalism is super sexist, and she needs to be a warrior, and all this stuff. But when Rhysand does it, when Rhysand promises he won't do it, and then does it after, taking her autonomy away with the pregnancy, he was justified. How in the world can you think like that? It does not register for me how anyone can think like that, how it's just a completely different reaction just because it's 2 different characters. I don't get it.
You're bringing up something else that's a really good point. This battle over traditionalism. Mm-hmm. And on the one hand, we have Tamlin, who he did kind of want the traditional thing, but so did Feyre at first, where she's like, I just want to hang out and paint.
Exactly. She was showing him she wanted, so he was going to help her.
Exactly. And, he won't get rid of the tithe, which when people are upset about the tithe, I'm like, where do you live that you don't pay taxes?
It is way less
Henry David Thoreau.
You'd be coming together to pay a fraction, please. And they could pay fish.
Which is actually much more kind, right? There's this, he understands his people, there's fishermen. I'm reminded of that scene in
trade, in, supplies, in food, in anything that you have.
Right. Meanwhile, Rhys is taxing Valaris, and 2/3 of his night court it's an apartheid state. And then, when we get to Rhysand, everyone's like, well, he made her high lady. He broke tradition. Okay, but he's ineffective at banning wing clipping because it is tradition.
Yeah.
So I feel like there is this battle of traditionalism. What is good traditionalism? Is it ever okay to keep some traditions? Yeah. I'm actually okay with tradition. That's just a personal belief. Not all traditions. I'm glad some things have changed. I'm glad I could vote.
Exactly, right?
But I don't think that all tradition, baby out with the bathwater, is ever necessarily a good thing. Yeah. And I also think it's hypocritical when people are like, I'm completely non-traditional. Yeah. I'm like, no, you definitely still keep some traditions, right? You put a Christmas tree up.
Yeah.
And, I just feel like there is this false sense of, again, feminism and choice when it comes to Rhys. He gives you the choice to you can have an apple or an orange. Meanwhile, there's a basket of pears there, but that's not on the table for you. You have these choices. And that's, my whole opinion on the whole choice thing.
But see, that's where that double standard comes in, because again, if Tamlin did it, it would be bad. If Rhys does it, it's good. Or if, Cassian does it, it's good. If Nesta does it, it's bad. And it's like, why are you putting these very particular characters up on a pedestal just because Feyre's POV is so swayed? Because she's going to be swayed by her mate, right? it's an intrinsic thing. Feyre can have her mate and respect him and all of that, but she can also have a mind of her own. And I think that the issue with this stems that I don't know whether it's Feyre that believes it, but I might take a jump and say that she believes if she doesn't always agree with Rhys, that it's just going to create tension like she had with Tamlin. And I think that she's terrified of that. I think she's terrified of confrontation or any fighting, especially because he is her mate.
Have you noticed that when Feyre disagrees with Rhys, there's like 2 instances where he actually gives her the silent treatment?
Yeah.
Right.
He either gets very angry, which was chapter 10 of Math, which I no, chapter 6, sorry, chapter 6 of Math, which I point out all the time when that one time that she tries to confront him about what he did to her under the mountain. And what happens? The room gets freezing cold, his shadows rip out of his body, he growls, he's very upset, like pissy upset. And the only reason why it stops is because Mor interrupts them, which is another weird thing, because the minute that Mor knocks, everything stops. And he's like, oh, I'm normal Rhys again. I'm normal. I'm okay. I'm not angry.
If Mor saw that, the illusion would be up, right?
Oh yeah.
That's such a good point. I give you a lot of credit for like remembering chapters. I'm like, I know that this
I argue all the time. I remember.
Right. I'm like, I know that this event happened in this book.
Yeah.
I don't know where. Like,
I mean, I've read the books 12 times.
have you really? I give you that's
specifically for the deep dives and the theories, because I need to know that my stuff is making sense canonically. Like, it's just a thing for me. Like, I have to know that everything's making sense and like puzzle pieces.
So let me ask you a question about canon. What do you think about the bonus chapters? Are they canon or not?
They are absolutely canon. Yeah.
I agree with you. I mean,
they are granted they are in different editions, but they are in the books sold in actual retailers. So
that's exactly my opinion.
Find them online, so.
Right. I'm like, they're out there. It's not like it was fan fiction published on like a like a second user website, right? Like she wrote them, put them in books. We're supposed to look at them.
Yeah.
You know,
they actually carry some of the biggest clues for the upcoming books. If you actually look at them, I actually the very first time I read all the Tog ones was this year, because I realized that there were Tog ones. Someone was talking about it on Reddit. And so I scoured the fucking internet to put all of the bonus chapters from Tog, ACOTAR, and Crescent City on my blog for everybody. So I uploading them and all this stuff, like, it wasn't uploading correctly, so I ended up like typing half of them out, and it took me like 3 nights.
Once again, I like A+ for dedication. Like, wow. I
was like, people need to be reading these because they are important. There's a lot of important things. And like with the Tog ones, if you read like one from Heir of Fire, one from Crown of Midnight, like there are huge hints to the following books. And this is how Sarah J. Maas writes them. She is going to put these giant hints about the following books in these bonus chapters. And I don't understand when people are like, oh, they're not important. Because yes, they are.
She's writing them for a reason, right? Like,
oh yeah, she's gonna write them
I don't. For nothing. I actually thought that the Cassian and Nesta one was so illuminating.
God. You're gonna get me going. I actually think we did a video about that one, like either on the same day or like a day apart.
Yeah. Right. Yes. I like vaguely remember. I remember reading it and being horrified.
I laughed my ass off.
I was like, I can't. I'm so confused. Like, and this is one of those things where I'm like, am I reading? And I hate when people say, I loathe when people say, like, did we read the same book? Because I'm like, yeah, we did. I know how to read. Thank you. You know,
he's a fucking pervert in that chapter. Like, he was a fucking pervert.
There's no other way of describing it. Like, if any man did that in real life, and this is what I'm saying, right? Like, people are like, he's so romantic. I'm like, if any person did that, if my husband did that to me, like there would be signs of problems there, right? Like, especially after she's talking about being abused and like assaulted, and this is when he takes the opportunity to
pick up your skirt.
I'm like, how do you even say that to somebody? That's so inappropriate. And he's
not just that either. It was the body language, because he didn't just ask her that. He grabs her arms and pulls her against him. She's a human, and she doesn't have the strength to escape him. He's caging her in with his arms, and he's like, "What's up your skirts, Ness?" And I'm like, one, that's physical assault because she didn't want you to touch her.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, she wanted me to. Like, did she tell you that? No, she didn't. Like, don't touch her.
Yeah.
It pissed me off so bad. And he does this a couple times. He like grabs her and pulls her in a couple times. And it's just, oh my God, it got me so angry.
No, yeah, that was a horrific chapter. And I also thought that the bonus chapter, Feyre's bonus chapter, where she and Reese, what is it? I think it's Silver Flame because she's already pregnant.
Silver Flames. Yeah, naming Nyx.
Right. And which was weird. I have a lot of thoughts.
I only read that one like twice because I was like, I can't do any more of these two. I can't.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, everyone's like, I miss them. I'm like, not me.
No,
Send them to the railroad track.
Please.
Get rid of them.
The only phase end I want to see going forward is Reese losing his utter shit and becoming Valg. That's it.
I would love that.
I want him to prove that he's Valg.
So wait a second. Let's talk about Reese for a minute and like being Valg. Because I know we're like all over the place, but this is fine. This is why I'm having you on my podcast. I know like the spirals.
I was like, I need to talk about Reese being Valg with her so bad.
Let me ask you a question, because like the Valg thing, very intriguing. There are vampires in Crescent City.
There are.
That's, you know,
they are not talked about that often.
Huh?
There's one that's like bad. He's like very creepy, and then he like gets killed off, and then the vampires are kind of gone.
I was having this conversation with, Sam, creative LBD. She's brilliant. I think they have to study her brain. I swear to God, like she just says things, and I'm like, how does your mind have the capacity to remember that much? Like she's brilliant. And I was talking to her, and I'm like, what's so weird is that like, Reese, because I watch True Blood. I love True Blood, and I'm like, there were so many parallels. And I was talking about how, I don't know if you've seen True Blood, but like when Bill Compton was changed into a vampire, he mourns his human life, right? Like because he recognizes that he's kind of dead. And I was relating this to the sisters, and I was like, they did die, right? Like they became something new.
That's when Nesta was like, if I call you mate, the last of my humanity is gone.
Right. And I was like, absolutely. Like it's this clinging to humanity. And for lack of a better term, they did die. And they have, no one gives Nesta especially the time to mourn. I mean, Elaine was catatonic. That's a totally different story.
In a year. Shut up, Elaine.
Yeah, like, okay, in a year. Like, that's not that much time.
Like Elaine, I did not like a lot of the things she did in Silver Flames, but in general, I'm okay with Elaine.
I feel like I don't know enough about Elaine to have an opinion. But wait, let's go back to my vampire problem. So, I'm talking about how, we start talking about True Blood and like the morning of life. And we start talking about like the Night Court and how vampires exist and how there's a lot of times that some of the Fae do have a lot of attributes of vampires. And like there are vampires in Crescent City. We know that the world's eventually,
Cameron did too when she was drinking the blood.
Okay, another really good point you're bringing up. Like, I didn't even think about that. And they nest, right? Like, that's something that vampires like to do together. And
bat boys.
They're bats. I mean, they're in the Night Court. Like vampires are
literally like caves under a fucking mountain.
This is just all right. You're making my point. Is Reese a vampire? And like I feel like I'm going to say that. I'm eventually going to have to make a video on this. And I'm talking about Reese being a vampire, and Sam was like, like we started talking about this, and I'm like, I have to be honest. I feel like there might be a lot of evidence here for this, and there's also like this sexual nature of vampires in literature, and there's definitely that going on between Reese and just like I don't know, like now that I think about it, he really does come across like a vampire and like a scary one. And so is his little group, his inner circle, right? Like it's like
I know that you guys have probably seen my theory about more being a witch queen and everything. Like,
yeah, right.
But it would be kind of cool if she was like a vampire queen.
I think that would be so much cooler.
Color was red.
Right. Like, blood, right?
Blood.
Like, when you think about all this stuff, it kind of, all of a sudden, like, it kind of makes sense. Like, they're even called bats. They have bat wings. Yeah. Imagine, like, the reason we don't see Cassian's ass is because, like, he hangs upside down. Like, that's how he sleeps. Like, I just feel like, never mind, get in the bin. Like,
I used to make a joke about how, like, Reese, like, sleeps upside down on the ceiling.
He might.
Because, like, hello.
Yeah, but I think that all of these theories, and I've never even touched on the vampire thing, like, because I feel like I'm not yet at the point where I should open that can of worms, but I think that there's something there. And I love the whole Val.
I cannot fucking wait for you to read Crescent City.
I can't wait.
I've been waiting. You need to read it.
I'm playing around with the idea of taking a Throne of Glass break because I'm supposed to start Tower of Dawn, and I might read the first Crescent City book. You know what I mean?
Well, actually, I decided to do the tandem, but I'm only a couple chapters in.
Okay.
I know EOS is supposed to be like really good, but I'm like, I need a break from Aelin. I can't.
Aelin was driving me crazy. She's not my favorite.
I know everything that happens in TOG. Like, obviously, I've been on here for 3 whatever years, but I know everything that happens. But it's just like Aelin. I can't.
I have a lot of problems with Aelin. I preferred Selena, and I feel like they are 2 different characters.
People think I'm crazy. I always say The Assassin's Blade is still my favorite book.
I don't think that's weird. No, I think that it was lighthearted and like kind of fun. I have to be honest. I think
Sam was my favorite.
What?
I'm gonna say it right now. Sam and Sorsha were my favorites, and I'm still mad to this day.
No, I really liked Sorsha. I really liked her character. I thought that was tragic what happened to her.
Yeah,
that was horrific.
I did this whole thing, or I posted a reel, I think, a couple weeks ago, where it was like an unpopular opinion thing, and I said, I am really mad that Sorsha wasn't Dorian's endgame, because even when, like, he was with Manon, like, he was still mourning Sorsha.
Yeah.
And it would have been way better for me. I know people won't agree, but for me, I think the way better love story would have been, the prince, literally his endgame being this poor healer who was nothing, had no title, whatever, and it was just that they loved each other, rather than, oh, the prince with the witch queen, and da-da-da, because that's kind of like, I don't know, that was
like the prince and princess get together like happily ever after. Right.
Come on. And I'm like, really? Like, first of all, Manon isn't even like a human person. Like, she doesn't really like the humans. So, like, I get that they had sexual chemistry, but I don't know. Dorian and Manon to me were kind of giving like Nesta and Cassian, where it's like they have sexual chemistry, but they have nothing else to me.
No, I don't understand that. I have to be honest, everybody always said, like, you're gonna love Manon. And I didn't get it. I liked her. I started to like her better in Empire of Storms, and oh god, because again, there's so
I
many
liked her in
books in
Queen
this
of
series.
Shadows. I began to really like her in Queen of Shadows.
Is Queen of Shadows where we learned that like her grandmother tells her true identity?
No, that's
okay,
Empire.
Okay, because I was like,
Yeah.
I don't remember
Queen of
anything in these
Shadows is
books.
when we figure out what Maitre Blackbeard did to Astrid and all that.
Okay, yes. I started to like her because I noticed a shift. I don't think that people understand how powerful love is.
Yeah.
But like true love. This was a conversation. True love, it's very powerful.
Okay. No other spoilers, but the entire theme of Crescent City and going with the whole multiverse is through love all is possible. That's the whole theme. That's the whole quote.
How Christian.
That leads into like all the crossovers and everything is like through love all is possible. So that was just hilarious that you said that.
But well, no, I mean, I think that that's a really true, theme in literature. Like, and what is true love though?
Yeah.
Like, okay, and everyone is like,
unconditional.
Right. Okay. Like it has to be unconditional, but in order for love to be conditional, you have to accept the conditionality of the other person.
Yeah.
Like, so that makes me wonder, does Cassian love Nesta?
No.
He does not accept
how
conditioned, like, there are conditions to her, and I think about that and it's actually really tragic. To love somebody, you have to love them fully. That includes their problems.
People hate me for my Cassian rants, but he does it like everything just adds up to him just wanting someone. Where I know everyone kind of puts that trait on Asriel and they're like, oh, he's getting obsessed with people because he's obsessed with finding a mate, but then they're not seeing Cassian doing the same thing but actively with Nesta, because we see Cassian talk about more and how he still longs for her, and Rhys says, oh, he will always long for her, and people will go, oh, that's in the past, but I digress. I don't think it's in the past at all.
Me either. He looks at her like she's a piece of steak.
No shit. I fight with people about that all the time. But it's not only more, but it's Tanwyn too, his ex, which, again, I've gone on rants about this, but the way that he describes Tanwyn, even though he thinks that she's dead, is like, she has a smile like a storm, and she was brilliant, and she was a warrior, and she was strong, and this and that, and the next thing, over and over, and it's like, you are never poetic about Nesta. There is not one instance of him complimenting Nesta that wasn't sexual.
I was just going to say that. The only time we see him compliment her is when he's like, her breasts look full.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and there's just, it's...
When she was sickly. Like, what the fuck?
I know. I'm like, this poor girl. Oh my God. Or like that hike from hell. I can't even...
Oh, she's so skinny, but she has a nice rack.
Right. I'm like, she's starving.
She's drinking herself to death right now.
Like, Jesus. But I love that whole, like, the question of what exactly is true love. And I think that we could examine, like, Nessian and say that that's not. But, there's different kinds of love. And I'm wondering if we haven't... I think in Silver Flames, we're starting to see different kinds of love. Like, on the one hand, we have the romantic love, right? Like, put that to the shelf for now, because that's the one that everyone wants to talk about. Like, what is romance,
Well,
and
we have the sisterly love,
but you have
love.
Yeah, right? Or the friend love, right? Between Nesta and her Valkyries. And, Nesta willing to give up power to save her sister and her nephew, right?
When willing to literally die 3 times to save Nesta and Emery.
Exactly. Like, this is a different kind of love. And I know that everyone knows they study theology, and people are always like, are you crazy? Like, are you becoming a nun? I'm like, no. But, like,
okay, Sarah J. Maas did as well.
Right. Like, there's a lot of people who study religion. Yeah. And, in Christian theology, and this actually comes from like the ancient Greeks who, and like the ancient Christian Greeks, they have different ways of looking at love, and there's different kinds of love. And I think that Sarah J. Maas might finally be tapping into that. Like, wait, romance is great, but there is other love that exists. And the one I'm really excited about is a mother's love, because that is like all-consuming.
What's gonna happen with Nyx? I am so excited.
I really hope something horrible like Tamlin kidnapped Nyx. Like, if that happens, I will burn my house down.
Oh, I have this whole thing where I had a theory that since Koschei is kind of targeting the Night Court first and foremost, that since Spring is the furthest court away, that Fair is going to have to actually eventually kind of beg Tamlin to protect Nyx while they're doing. And like, I feel like that would be such an amazing full circle thing, because in book 1 we heard Tamlin talk about, you know, he has the children's books and my son will, you know, be my heir one day and all this stuff. And he was like kind of talking about kids and his childhood and all of that in book 1. So just for that to come full circle and for Feyre to realize like, oh shit, like this is the furthest court away.
Sorry, it's my mother. Oh my God. One second, let me just, hey, I'm in a podcast. Take you, Corey, back. I love you. Bye. Okay, break a leg. Let me know how it goes.
I mean, the most perfect part for your mom to call, but
I know.
motherly love.
I know. Motherly love. My mom's giving me a call. I might leave that in.
Right?
Here we talking about it.
Yeah, but just for Feyre to kind of put her love for Nyx above her, not really hatred, but kind of her annoyance still at Tamlin to protect her son, and even realize that Tamlin would protect her son, I think would be an amazing full circle moment. And I really kind of hope Sarah writes it that way.
And I think Tamlin would protect Nyx.
Oh, he would.
I think so. Not just because he loves Feyre, and I think he's mad, and I think he's disgusted, and I think he's hurt. I think he still loves her.
Kid.
But I think that it would be the noble thing to do is to protect a child.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think that also would, Nesta and Tamlin have a lot of similarities.
Oh my God, yes.
And Nesta was willing to protect the child. You know what I mean? And I think that this is something that we would also see Tamlin do. And, you know, just Tamlin's just the most tragic character, like, ever. And everyone makes fun of it. I'm a Tam girl, but
we are Tam stands. All right, like, look at my shirt. It says "Proud Rhysand Hater." Like,
I love it. I love it.
It's on my shop.
Love it. I know. I will link your shop too in my in the notes for this post. But I don't know, the entire thing with Tamlin and just, you know, this is something, I love him. I do. I think that he's a sweetheart and I think that he's made mistakes. I do, but he never hit her.
Hasn't, like,
right? I mean, and you know, and he always gets, here's my problem. He always gets compared to Rhysand. Everyone's like, I mean, compared to Rhysand. I'm like, yeah, compared to Rhysand, what? Rhysand's a psychopath. Like, yeah, okay, I don't know what you
still better than Rhys.
And you know, everyone's like, but Tamlin locked Feyre in the house. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, right.
It's twice.
I'm like, okay.
Literally the Court of Nightmares.
Right. Like, you know, so this is, again, like everything I'm saying, I'm like, I think that you're comparing, you know, the wrong thing here. But something too that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I want your opinion on, thinking about the scene in a court, I think it's Frost and Starlight, when Rhysand goes to visit Tamlin, and he's like, do you think that Feyre will ever forgive me? Right. And Rhys, I actually don't even remember exactly what he says, but he's like, I don't know. What if she
like, that's not up to me or whatever?
What if she has? What if this is like her avenue for actually having a mind of her own? Because remember, she does have that human heart, right? Like,
apparently.
Apparently, I'd love to see it, but like maybe that's
to be seen. Gone in Akamath, but
right.
That's me.
Like, I'm wondering if there's a part of her that will forgive Tamlin, and that, like, maybe Rhysand won't be able to handle that. You know?
My personal opinion on this. It's a little bit of a theory thing, but what else is new?
Theory.
My personal opinion on this is that we kind of see the pattern, going back to the Rhys's Val thing, we see the pattern of Rhys slowly getting worse throughout the books.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to say that he wasn't horrific under the mountain, but I think, you know, he claims Under the Mountain was a mask, right? I don't think it's a mask anymore. I think that when he got resurrected in ACOWAR, there was a clip of Sarah J. Maas saying that there will be consequences for that. And I keep that in the back of my head all the time because we haven't seen it yet. But she said, oh, there will be consequences for him, you know, coming back again or whatever, because this was after Silver Flames. And I think that when he got resurrected, he had to give something. Because if you think about it, every time that we're dealing with the Cauldron, you have to give something to get something. So, you know, the Archerons had to give their humanity and they got, you know, turned Fae and powers. Aelin had to give her powers to keep her life. So Rhys has his powers. Rhys has his Faeness. Like, what did he have to give? We haven't seen that yet. So in my opinion, he's always been Valg. I think he got it from both sides of his family. His mother's side for being kind of a witch because of the ring, and his father's side for being part of Maeve's line intertwined with Celene's line. So I think he got it from both sides and it manifested in him. If we remember Rhys's story, and how he was describing how terrified his father was of him, I think his father knew this. I think he knew that he always kind of had a Valg inside of him, like Dorian. but was born with it. And I think when he got resurrected, he had to give up partial control to that Valg. And I think that's what's happening here. I think that in Akasif and Hillfast, we haven't read it yet, he is completely losing control of it, and it's taking over him when he's angry, specifically. And again, we've seen it in Math when he got angry at her for bringing up Under the Mountain. We saw it in Under the Mountain when he got angry at her and the talons were coming out and the wings were ripping from him. And we see it in Akawar when he's shifting into his beast form, which is a Valg demon. It's described the exact same way as Maeve's, except he has wings, the Illyrian wings. So I think he had to give control. I think his Valg is like slowly taking over, and that's what he's always been terrified of, because this is the arc here. One of the first things that Rhys ever says to Feyre in book 1, Under the Mountain, is, I am terrified to yield myself to that baser side of me. And he kept that energy. He was scared to go into his beast form during the war. And it took him so much longer than the other High Lords to come out of it, because she was fighting with Tarquin, and she makes a point to say, oh, Rhys was still too far gone in that beast to do anything but growl. So him coming back and losing more control over that beast is, I think, what's making him unhinged. And we're going to see it come out completely and kind of overtake him. And I think that's what's going to trigger Feyre into being like, holy shit, like, how did I not know, like, any of this? Like, you didn't tell me the specifics of your powers, because he really didn't. He really doesn't tell anyone the specifics of anything. I mean, I guess we can assume that Cassian knows, because there is that line in Akathas when he says, when Rhys says, oh, I wish I could just skip a couple weeks past this. And Cassian says, with that power of yours, why don't you? And then Rhys just gives him a look, like, okay, enough. And then he's like, oh, my power, will scare the shit out of my family sometimes, but they still care about me. And he has this line of familial love and all of that. But it's like, so if your family knows, it's weird that Feyre doesn't still.
They're in the dark about everything,
So if he's triggered in front of Nyx, and something like that happens in front of Nyx, I do think she's going to put Nyx above everything and, again, maybe ask Tamlin for help.
I would love that. And you want to know something? And I'm just saying this out here now. I wouldn't blame her. And I wouldn't say, told you so.
Yeah.
Because you know what? It's very hard for a woman to leave an abusive relationship.
And Rhys is cunning. He says it.
Yep.
Rhys is the most cunning High Lord.
He has to say about yourself. Like,
cunning is a bad derogatory word. It's not a fun word.
Right.
It's sneaky, manipulative.
That's a really good point. And I love this whole theory that you're working with, by the way, because I think that I think that there's more to it. And I think it's important to understand, too, that with magic, when you're working with magic systems, magic costs something.
There's always a price.
And that's a whole theme in Throne of Glass, right? Like, everything has a price.
We haven't seen his price.
You can't just do what you want when you want. And, I think that we've yet to see that. And I almost think that when we read a work like Frost and Starlight, it's this false sense of, like, happy times, right? Like, it's solstice and we're drinking and we're dancing and we're hanging up garlands and,
it's distracting. It's distracting from the meat of it that we're supposed to be paying attention to.
Right.
And I was like, this is a distraction. What are we supposed to be looking at? And the thing that stuck out to me the most out of everything, aside for that line that I said about his power, was the fact that when Rhys is talking, I forget exactly what he's talking about Cassian and Nesta and how there's threads to be woven here. Weird.
Hate it.
Weird. Because if he's related to Maeve, hello, Rowan and Lyria, and he's talking about that. He's talking with Cassian about Nesta. And then his tone kind of shifts and he says, perhaps there's threads to be woven here. And Cassian's response to that is something along the lines, oh, like, okay, my lord, or something. Ooh. And I'm like, when has Cassian ever called him my lord? Right. Like, and it wasn't even like a jokey scene either. So I was like, is this Cassian recognizing when his Valg is taking over?
Right.
And he doesn't want to, I don't know, trigger it?
Right.
Because that's the thing in Tog, right? Don't they call, like, a lot of the Valg, like, my lord, my king, like, you have to use their titles, right? The Valg Princess and Maeve, the Valg Queen. And so I was like, that was very weird to me, that Cassian called him my lord.
Yeah, and I think that this is all very intentional language. I think that Sarah J. is very intentional. Yeah. And, not only do I think she's intentional based on, like, all the allusions to other works and, just things like the weird
words, specific words.
Right. But also, this is a multi-world universe. Yeah. So, and they're supposed to be connected in some capacity. So she is picking on very specific things to say, right? And, like, that's why I think we're supposed to pay attention to this kind of stuff. And I I would love to be a fly on the wall if this is all true. I want to see. I want to be in the room with the Rhysand stands, like when they're reading. I gotta see it. Like I just need to
Like, I
have
have
that.
to see the fandom lose their fucking minds because we've been saying this for so long.
You know,
Like, I've been saying this for so long, and it's like,
and I give you credit, like, because this is again, I only started these books like what 7, 8 months ago, and I made my first TikTok. It was while I was reading ACOWAR, and I was like, yeah, I have to be
I was
honest.
like, yes, a
I was like,
fellow race
I was
criticizer.
like, I don't. And again, I was never on Book Talk.
Mhm.
That wasn't even in my algorithm.
Yeah.
I just made a video about it one day. I was like, I have to be honest. I don't understand what's happening. And like then it just like exploded from
I was like, I will adopt her.
yeah, I was like, what am I missing? Because my best friend convinced me to read the series.
Yeah.
And she was like, you're gonna love it. And I'm like, okay, but she's a Rhysand fan. So I remember I was talking to her about it. I'm like, so you like this guy? Like, and she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, like
It's weird.
he's very problematic. And, just all of that. And, I remember because I didn't know anything about the fandom. I didn't know anything. Like, I didn't even know that she had the books. Okay. Like I was just reading ACOTAR. And, just when I was more introduced to like the things that the fandom thinks and where everything is, I was like, what is happening? And, everyone's like, why are you reading this if you don't like dark romance? I'm like, this isn't supposed to be dark romance. Like,
No,
you want to read
it's
Closing
not.
Adeline. I don't know who would read that or like I just finished Lights Out.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
I was under no impression that was like a happy romance because it's not supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
Like, I don't get how Math is like, oh, they're so romantic. No, they're not. It's super abusive. And he continues to be abusive. And he continues to put her, like, in the line of death for his own gain.
right. Like, that's my biggest problem. Like, and it's a, it's looked at like, oh my God, what a beautiful love story. I'm like,
the argument where it's like, oh, but he gives her a choice, and oh, but he knew she was strong enough to deal with it. No, he didn't. He was going off the flat. He needed her to do it. It wasn't, oh, I have so much faith in you that I'm gonna let this happen. It was, I need you to do this, so I'm just gonna let whoever attacks you, and then, if you need help, I guess I'll help. And, like, it wasn't him having faith in her in the way that, like, Azriel had faith in the Valkyries during the Blood Rite. Like, they think that's the same, and it's not. And it's like, actually, Azriel having faith in the Valkyries during the Blood Rite is a lot better than Rhys claiming he had faith in Feyre going into the fucking Weavers. Like, that was another trial. You basically just put her through another fucking trial.
I completely agree. I think I might have been talking to Sam about this. Yeah. I feel like everything that Rhysand makes her do is actually a series of tests to decide whether or not she was fit to be his mate.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me, I have to be honest, I don't know if they are mates. Like, listen, they might be because I do think that she's totally messed up in the head and like crazy. But at the same time,
unfortunately think they are, but I definitely think at the same time that he has a switch in her head. Right. And he has since the dining room scene in book 1.
Right. And like, if they weren't mates, I would not be surprised.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Right. Yeah. Like, if it was like, oh my God, he created the mating bond, I'd be like, well, I could have saw that coming. Like, definitely.
This is, okay. I was going off about this with Olivia and Eka the other day because I think did we film it on the podcast? We might have filmed it on the podcast. I think we did a while ago. But the way that nobody talks about the Hybern scene in terms of Rhys and Feyre. So yeah, they're all like, oh, Tamlin got them thrown in the cauldron, which never happened.
No, didn't.
But anyways, they don't talk about what happens with Rhys and Feyre in that scene, which is, Feyre is the one that says break the bond first. It is not Tamlin. It is nobody but Feyre because she's pretending, right? She's kind of pretending to be mindfucked by Rhys, even if she actually is. She's pretending, right? And she says something very particular that kind of got the red flags going for me. And she says, he forced me. He made me be his mate. Break the bond. Break the bond. And the fact that not a single fairy soul there said, that's not possible, was a red flag to me. Because you're telling me that nobody piped up to say, it's not possible to fake a mating bond? Which
means that somewhere it could have been possible. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, again, but these things exist in the same universe. And I think we're supposed to be skeptical of things. Like, oh my God. I didn't think about that.
He have forced a mate bond on you, but nobody's saying anything. Although I think Jurian was going to say something, but he didn't. Because it says, oh, Jurian opened his mouth to speak and then thought better of it. So I was like, what the fuck was he going to say? I'm so curious to know. Because Jurian is the person that Rhys is the most afraid of, which is hilarious to me, other than Nesta now. But Jurian was the person that Rhys was the most afraid of, because Jurian says to him, like, I know everything that happened under the mountain. I know all of your secrets. I know everything about you. And the fact that Rhys then goes and sees the bone carver as Jurian, it's still fucking with him. The way
that happened, that conversation between Rhys and Jurian.
It's in the Hybern camp with the cauldron, when they get caught by Hybern, the king of Hybern, and Jurian, and he shoots Azriel and he says like, "Oh, I saw everything you did under the mountain." Like he says something along the lines of that, and Reese was like,
Oh,
pissed.
oh, I have to go back and read
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Because-
Because then the king says, Jurian wants the High Lord of Night dead. And I thought that was also weird. Because why? I don't think that was pretend. I think it was
You know,
supposed
we
to be.
don't have any other
I know.
perspectives.
I
You
know.
know, and this is like the difference between like showing and telling, and
Mhm.
right, like
Everyone was focused on like the sisters and Azriel bleeding and Cassian bleeding and all this, and I'm
what
like,
does
you're
Jurian know?
not catching these little things that she's throwing
That's
in here.
yeah, no, this is great stuff, Mel. You know, like and this is why I'm so skeptical of everything that happened under the mountain.
Yeah.
People are like, but he said what happened to him. I'm like, okay, but he could lie.
He's
like,
a liar.
like you know, and then and this is
Ugh.
where I always get in trouble when people start calling me bad names because they're
Oh
like,
yeah,
you denying someone's abuse, testimony.
he was not
I'm like,
a victim.
no, I'm not
I'm
because
sorry, he was not.
here. So
Oh yeah, people hate me. People fucking hate me. I've gotten so many death threats over this.
and it's so this is twofold for me. Number one, we know that he admits to seducing her, and this was an act of war for him. Like, it can't be assault if you
This is where my
admit, and
shooting takes up.
you know,
'Cause-
and also,
Ugh.
like you're saying it's an act of war. And okay, if you want to have a conversation about just war theory, okay, totally different thing, but it's not assault, right? Like in the same way that killing someone on a battlefield is different than murder,
Yeah.
like there has to be a difference between assault and then like sexual weaponization.
Yes.
And then additionally, we don't see it. And I think that that's one of those very telling things because we do see other instances of assault, like actually witnessing assault, right? Like we see Lucian, who's getting assaulted by Anthony. We see in the bonus chapter Nesta's flashbacks of when she was abused and like, about to be assaulted. And we even see the scene of the sisters going into the cauldron, and that's a metaphor for sexual assault.
So yeah.
And we see these things, but we only hear about it from Reese. And
that's one of the mirrors between Reese and Tamlin that I've caught, is that we've been told of their abuse, but we haven't seen flashbacks or anything of it.
Who was Tamlin abused by?
Amarantha Highburn, his father, as a child.
Oh, okay. I
His
didn't realize
father,
that like
when he was a child, his father would drag him to the meetings with Highburn.
I thought that she just liked him. I didn't realize that she was abusing. Oh my God.
So here's the thing, right? So Tamlin was the youngest of 3 boys. Nobody knew he was going to be the heir, especially when he was that little.
Yeah.
But his father specifically brought him to the Highburn camp with him for the meetings, which is where, Reese says Amarantha began to lust for him with her whole wicked heart or whatever. So then you have to think, like, if you don't think your youngest child is going to be your heir, why bring him unless you knew that you could barter time with him to Amarantha for political favors?
That's super gross.
And that's why I think Tamlin is so terrified of Amarantha, and that's why he refused her when he was an adult, because I think she was doing shit to him as a kid there for political favors for his father. They were best friends. Because his father even said, like, my father didn't give a fuck about me. Like, I was the youngest. I wasn't, anything really. And I was like, why is he dragging the youngest if he doesn't care about him, if he's not going to be the heir? So that was very particular to me, because that's like a whole lot of context that I think people ignore. Because nobody knew he was the heir when he was like, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, whatever. And the father's friends with Highburn for some reason. They all want slaves back. They're all on the same side for the war. And he's bringing his youngest son that the war general just happens to be lusting for.
Yeah, that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
I knew she lusted after him. I didn't think that maybe he was assaulted. But that just adds another layer of
but I think that's
trauma
also
to poor
why
Tamlin, the fiddleman.
But that's also why I think Tamlin is also hypersexual. Because that's the him and Reese mirror right there.
Do you think Tamlin's hypersexual?
I think he was once he fell for her. I think there has to be feelings there, which Reese, I think, would probably fuck a pole. To me. But like Tamlin, I think obviously there has to be feelings there. But when they were into it, I do think him and Feyre fed off of each other's energy.
Right.
In which they were kind of hypersexual, but I wouldn't say as much as the Bat Boys.
No, because like I feel like when we see the Bat Boys being sexual, it's more like they're even flirty, like with their friends.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, we fucked in the same room as teenagers."
Right.
Like, Tamlin would not do that.
Tamlin doesn't even know how to flirt. He's like, "Fair, your hair's nice. It looks clean." Like, I mean, and the only time that we see Tamlin like really step into his like primal sexual energy is during something like Calamite when he's under the influence. So
and he doesn't like that.
No,
he doesn't like not being in control. And I think that's a flashback to the Amarantha shit too.
Right. Oh God, that's so dark. That's disturbing.
When I first read, I was like, this has to be why he hates Calamay, why he screamed at Lucian when Lucian was like, you need to hurry up and seduce her, talking about Feyre. Because remember, he was very mad at Lucian when Lucian's like, you have to hurry up and seduce her. Because Amarantha did that to him as when he was young. So he's seeing this young human girl, and he's like, I'm not fucking doing that, especially after all our kind has put them through. Which, again, Hybern and his father abusing the slaves, that goes back to that. Amarantha, everything, the way that Tamlin acts is just screams that he was Amarantha's pet as a kid.
You know, I also think that there's something, talking about it, there's something even more insidious about her curse. Because, like, you know, you gotta find a human. And by just relative terms, any human's gonna be a child to a fae. Right? Like, he's 300, however, what is Tamlin, like 300, 350, right?
He was 508 in the first book.
I thought that he was younger than Rhysand. That's what
he is. So Rhys in the first book is 537. Tamlin's 508.
Okay.
So when Tamlin was too young to fight in that first war with his father, he was a child, and Rhys was in his 20s.
Okay. Now that all of a sudden makes sense. Okay. I didn't. Could you imagine being bless you? Could you imagine being 500 and being with a 19-year-old? That actually sounds miserable.
He was really mad at Lucian. Lucian's in his 300s.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of, like Lucian, the baby. Okay.
Lucian's the little fireling, but yeah.
Right. Still 300 years old. Like, I mean,
like Rhys calls him a child, so like.
Right. Like, I really didn't realize Tamlin was that. And like poor Tarquin, isn't he? Like,
there's like 30. They're like 30 years apart. 31.
Okay. Isn't Tarquin like super young though?
Tarquin's 80.
Like, yeah, like I mean, he's like,
he's a baby.
Yeah, like my grandma's older than Tarquin. You know what I mean? Like you think about that, like nanny.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
But that's why the one kind of scene of Rhys that I did kind of appreciate was in Akafast when he's like, holy shit, it's her 21st birthday, and Cassian's like, it's fine. He's like, no, she's 21. Like, she's little. Like, she's 21. And he's like, oh my god. And Cassian's like, well, your father was 900 to your mother's 18. And he's like, yeah, but that was half of their problem.
Yeah, you know, I guess credit where credit's due, because I'll give credit where it's due. Yeah. Like, you know, there was even times, like, I did that video about, like, the best things that the men of the Massiverse have done. Rhys made the list, I think, twice. I'm like, all right, I gotta give him credit. Like, he does recognize that that's a really weird age gap. You know, Like,
this is why Tamlin was so mad at Lucian, because he knows what that's like. Because Hybern and Amarantha and the Hybern twins are thousands of years old. Older than Beren. Beren's like 1100 right now.
Oh my god. Is Beren the oldest High Lord?
Yeah. That's why they call him.
Why did I know this? Was this in the books?
It's weaved in. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Because they said that Lady Autumn was 20 when she got married to Beren. Beren was in his 500s. This was before the war. The first one.
Lady Autumn, that whole thing just disgusts that.
Yeah, so then, according to the timeline, she had Eris around the time when she was like 40. So they're only like recent Tamlin age apart, him and his mom.
Okay, yeah.
So Lady Autumn is now like kind of the same age as Eris and the Bat Boys or whatever, basically.
Oh my god.
So if she's 540 something or 570 something, Eris is 540 something like the Bat Boys, then yeah, Beren's like 1100 right now.
Jesus. Okay.
Yes, yeah. And
this just all becomes so much more predatory. But you know, then there's people who are like, I love a 500-year-old man. I'm like, I get it, but like, you're not a teenager either. You know, like, and I do think there's a little bit of a difference there. Like, you know, I'm gonna be 30 soon.
Yeah,
so
me too.
Woo! Yeah, you know, the third floor.
Yeah, right.
It's a lot different than, like, I think about Figured. I'm like, when I was 19, I was really stupid. Like, really stupid. Like, I think about me, like, I was a freshman in college. Like, you know, I see, you know, when you see kids like in college, you say to yourself, like, oh my God, you're so naive. And like, you do crazy things, you go to parties, you join a frat house, you get a you don't want.
Yeah, this is where I say that I am the most boring person on earth. Because I was not a wild child. Like, I have never been like a rebel. Like, I've never been a wild child. First of all, both of my parents are cops. So
this was never gonna happen for you. Oh.
I mean, but secondly, like, my grandmother was a strict Catholic. Like, I grew up with her until my mom got married when I was, like, 9. They were both cops. Like, they didn't have time to fuck around with a rebel child. I was always, like, the perfect kid. Because before my mom got married, my mom has 5 sisters.
Okay.
Oof. It was me and my mom and 4 of her sisters and my grandmother in one little cottage.
You guys would give the Archerons a run for their money.
Exactly. One tiny fucking bathroom and a hovel. No, it wasn't a hovel. It was like a cottage. But like my grandmother used to say 2 to a cell because it was 2 people and 2 in each bedroom, you know? So it's like I didn't have room to be an issue. Because first of all, some of my aunts were the issue. And I just learned to sit back and be the perfect child. I was the first grandkid, the first niece, the first everything. So, yeah, my mom was 20 when she had me, so, like, fair and mixed, whatever. And it's like, I had no room to be an issue.
No,
So
I get that.
I
And, like,
never did anything wrong. Like,
no, and in fairness, I don't want you to think that, like, I was some crazy, like, I wound up getting a theology degree. Trust me, it wasn't like there wasn't much insanity, but like,
I wasn't drinking, I wasn't smoking, I wasn't doing really anything that
okay, well, I
teenagers
can't say that. I
do.
was drinking and smoking, but like again, I just think about the things that like college kids do, and like even the mindless things that aren't necessarily bad, but just your frontal lobe's not developed, so you do things like you forget where you park your car, like
Yeah.
very innocent, stupid things, or you forget to feed the dog one day, right? Like so, there's things
They're
like
like, oh,
that.
hey, I'll drive you here. Yeah, just get in the car with a fucking stranger. Like, you're gonna
Right,
die.
like, kids do dumb things. Like, did you see that? He was a freshman. He was a freshman at, I think it was Temple. And this was a few weeks ago when the Phillies won a game.
Yeah.
Not the Phillies, the Eagles, Jesus.
Yeah.
And he climbed the lamppost and he fell and he actually died. He was a freshman, he was 19.
Damn.
And, like, I'm like, that's the kind of stuff I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
he was just so excited about the sports team winning, but it cost him his life because, young people do silly, naive things because they don't have the wisdom of the
They
elders,
think
right?
that they're invincible. And I think
Absolutely.
Feyre still thinks she's invincible after Under the Mountain.
Well, and
And
I will
that's
say,
the big thing there.
I will say one thing that I do like about Cassian. There is a knowledge of life and death with him, where he's the only one, and I picked up on this in Akasif, where he's like, we're almost immortal. Because you're not actually immortal. You don't age. You're never going to die of old age. I mean, but like eventually, like maybe because Magda looks old, right? Like maybe at some point if you're decrepit, I don't know. Like
Magda's probably like 3,000.
right. Like, but there is this understanding that you can die. I actually think Cassian.
That's why I think that he's the one going to die because of all the foreshadowing. But
I think someone has to die.
he's
Someone.
definitely.
People think I'm crazy. They're like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Nothing. I need some."
But yeah, when you said about Cassian, like I do like the scenes. I think there was 2 of them in Akawar, or maybe one was Akawar, one was Akasif. But there was 2 scenes of Cassian where he acknowledges, like, I am always the one that has to go tell the families of my soldiers who died that they're dead.
That's a rough job.
And yeah, and like my dad does that for his job. He works for the T. He's the guy that has to go and tell them, like, oh, your kid jumped in front of a train.
Oof, okay.
So, like, even personally, I know what that's like. And I feel like SJM kind of did him a disservice there because, yeah, she throws out these lines, but then it's like we don't see how it affects him. And that's the issue that I have with the inner circle is that they don't, it's not that they don't let it, but they don't show that things affect them. Which is different from, like, Tamlin, because we know Tamlin has trauma, and we know that he blow-ups because he has panic attacks and all this stuff, and we know that Feyre had nightmares, and...
Let me throw a stone in your theory. Hold on. Don't Valg feed on bad energy?
Oh, yeah.
So,
that's part of it.
Like, again, I think that this is all circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
But, what
they feed off of, like, power and energy, and yeah.
What if that's Cassian, like, gaining his energy, right? Like I got to go tell people that their loved ones are dead in order to sustain my own living. Like, or even Amryn, like, and I'm sorry, she's an angel who fell. Like, listen, this does not take a theology degree. She's a demon. Like
Lucifer, right
like
now.
She's that's the literal definition of a demon. Like, is a fallen angel. And we know that the Valg are demons. Like, this is one of those things where I'm like, this isn't me reading through the lines.
That is my whole, oh my god.
Like, that's not reading through the lines. That's like actually
I have whole
it what it is.
highlights on Amryn and Rhys both, and they do share a couple of my reels where, I'm not to skip around, but where it's just like the fact that, my theory is that, how I said Rhys got Valg from both sides of his family, and the fact that Rhys says, like, oh, Amryn's known my family for centuries, and and he's like, well, when I became High Lord, like, we already knew each other, so I made her my second. I'm like, but what do you know about her? Like, in terms of your family, like, knowing your family?
Why was she in the prison? Why was she in the prison?
Right? Well, so, according to her and Rhys, during Akasif, when Nesta comes back and asks them about Lanthis and the Wild Hunt, this is when they kind of explain Amryn. And so they said that when the Daglin were defeated by Fionn with Gwydion went missing, and all of this stuff, the rest of the Daglin were all kind of gathered up and thrown in the prison. The rest that they could find. And because Amryn was a new creature in the world, they saw her as one of the Daglin, and they locked her up for that. But she never gives anything to the contrary, ever.
Yeah, that's...
It's weird. And then they kind of go on to that Wild Hunt, and they skip over it. But it's like, you're not going to say anything?
Right. Like, isn't that kind of weird? And, she's a walking library. What do angels have? Infused knowledge, right? Like, so she knows everything. And, and I'd have to look this up, but I'm pretty sure that, like this concept of infused knowledge is also transcendent of time. So, when Amryn says things like, go ahead, become High King, it would be good. Like, what does she already know?
This is a big Crescent City thing. I don't want to spoil you. It's a huge.
Okay, I really have to read those books.
Thing with the libraries and the angels and all this shit. But just the fact that, I mean, Amryn straight up lied to Rhys about how she got out of the prison. And the fact that he doesn't call her out for that more kind of jarred me. And this is where the issue is between him and his second. Because he doesn't ever want to question her. He doesn't want to know, essentially. Which is kind of like how he treats everybody else. Oh, they don't want to know about my powers because it'll scare them, right? So I feel like he's kind of passing that down. But when Elaine asked Amryn, like, oh, you just chose the female form, and like, is this how this happened? And then I was like, good for you, Elaine, asking all the questions right now. But when Amryn is like, yeah, I had to bind myself to a fey body to get out of the prison so it wouldn't recognize me as who I really was. And the gates would open or whatever, which is very suspicious.
Yeah.
And again, it does not go with the story in Crescent City, which is why I'm still suspicious of Amryn. But then Rhys was like, oh, well, you told me this happened instead of that. And she's like, yeah, I lied. As if it was like nothing that she's been lying for 500 plus years.
Like, I don't like Amryn at all.
He's like, oh, you told me that one day the gates just opened for you. She's like, yeah, I lied. What?
But also, who would believe something so stupid?
I know.
The gates just opened of a prison? Was there a power outage? Like I don't. This is one of those, and I made a few TikToks about this. Mm-hmm. I would not do well in a fantasy world because I would just be like, what do you mean by that?
I would be the Elaine. Crazy? Like, I'll be the seer, but I'm not going to be a warrior.
Yeah, I'm not going to war. War? Get out of here.
No.
You want me to go to Leader's Cottage? Okay.
I don't know if you caught this. Again, I won't bring in the Crescent City stuff because I want you to figure that out on your own and be shocked because we need to talk when you're done with that. But I don't know if you caught this or if I am just someone who has read the book so many times that I catch everything. But when Rhys is explaining the prison to Feyre, I think it's in math. I think it's in Akamath when they go visit the Bone Carver and all this. And he says, oh, the prison is keyed to my blood, my family's blood. That's how he can open, the gates of the prison, enter, do what he wants, because, which is weird that we never saw him, like, physically cut himself and, like, put his hand up to it, but I digress. It's key to his blood, whatever that means. But then, when, in the dining room scene, when Asriel is talking to Feyre, I think it was, like, it's around the time that they're talking about flying lessons, I believe. And then the whole thing of the prison comes up and how she's like, oh, I need to go there to get answers from the Bone Carver, and they didn't want to tell Amryn, and before the whole giving her the amulet thing. And so it's in the dining room, and Asriel's like, oh, I'll just go. They know what I am. And I was like, Asriel, sir, if it's keyed to Rhys's family's blood, what are you not telling us?
Yeah.
Because if Rhys allows you to go by yourself, how the fuck are you getting in?
Oh my god, you do really, man, your brain should be studied too. No, this is why, like,
I go, how can you go alone if it only lets the blood of Rhys's family enter? Which then leads me back to the fact that Mor would never sleep with him. I think Mor knows that they're also distant cousins with Asriel.
Oh my god. Well,
and that is why they both have darkness. They all have darkness magic.
But they're all Illyrian too, right?
Mor isn't Illyrian.
No, Mor's not. But like the Bat Boys, like historically, you'd have to be somehow related. Yeah. Like, there's parts of the United States. The United States is actually a very new country where like everybody in a town.
Blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, just when people are usually gathered in certain communities, they share a lot of the same genetic pool, right? So I don't know how this is almost like one of those things where I'm like, I don't know how I didn't kind of realize this because this almost seems obvious, right? Like we see this, and like with
people were actually shocked when I did my reel about that. I was like,
no, but this is really interesting. Like, I mean, and there's only so many Illyrians, so and children are very hard to come by. So, I mean, I'm not like you guys were maybe second or third cousins. I don't think I'd be that surprised. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh, I think it's closer than that.
Do you think Asriel's his brother?
No,
okay.
I think they're cousins.
You think they're first cousins?
Because the line.
You think that Asriel is maybe? Wait,
I think he's his direct cousin. So I'm going to tell you why. Because the other part of Asriel's story that we did get was that so Cassian was a bastard. He was starving. He was a little kid. Rhys found him in the camp, right? But Azriel's story was different because Azriel's story is that Rhys said, wait, did Rhys say it or did Cassian say it? It might have been Cassian telling this story. I don't remember. But he says that, oh, Rhysand's mother knew Azriel's mother. And so then that's why she took him in. I think that we have a Rhys and Nesta situation going on with Rhys's father and his mate's sister. I think Azriel's mother was Rhysand's mother's sister.
Okay. Oh.
Because we know that Rhys's father refused to ban wing clipping. The only reason he saved Rhys's mother is because they were mates. The mate bond snapped. She was about to get her wings clipped, but she didn't because he saved her. I think he refused to save any other part of her family. Like, he's only obligated to save his mate, technically. But she knew Azriel's mother. So either when she went out flying at night, she was going to see her sister to ask about Azriel, because that's that whole thing where basically Azriel's father raped his mother. That's how he was conceived. He's a rape baby. That's her trauma. And then I think the mother was sneaking out to see her sister, and I think that's when the talks of, okay, well, when he dumps my child in the Illyrian camps and, his father still won't let me see him, who's going to take care of him? And I think that's why she took Azriel in. I think he was her nephew.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even worse.
Why?
That he wouldn't.
Why bring up, oh, Rhys's mother knew Azriel's mother? Did they?
Right. And like how?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I definitely think that his father was like, I'll take care of you. You're my mate, but I'm not fucking taking care of your family. And we don't really know how he felt about.
That's kind of how Rhysand acts too, towards
exactly, because with the Nesta thing and Elena's Elaine, like, he's very much like his dad. But just the fact that it was like, I used to go flying with my mom at night, and I used to do this, and my father would get super angry. It's just like, did he know that she was like going to see her sister?
Right.
Or, it just reminds me of Rhys and Nesta, kind of.
No, I could see that.
Because if she, Azriel's father is an Illyrian camp lord, so he's up there in terms of status, right? So if she was kind of making a fuss about, oh, this camp lord raped me, and that would create a lot of problems for the High Lord, right?
Oh my god. This is just so disturbing to me right now. And I think that this makes it even worse that, like, Rhys can't enforce the wing clipping. You know what I mean?
No. But I don't know if Rhysand knows. I think maybe Mor knows, which is just another thing she's not telling them. But I'm like, why wouldn't you sleep with Azriel? Because if he's the most classically beautiful and he loves you, you do sleep with men. Oh, I slept with Cassian because I knew Azriel loved me too much. No, it's because he's family. That's why you didn't sleep with Azriel.
This got so much worse.
I know, and I don't like Azriel. I don't think he knows like the depths of it. Like, I don't think he knows that he's Rhys's first cousin. I don't even think Rhys knows. Because there's this whole thing, again, I'm not going to tell you, but there's this whole thing in CC3 where Rhys doesn't know shit, but Azriel knows shit. So, if Azriel knows specific things and Rhys doesn't know specific things about this particular bloodline, you have to think they're of the same bloodline, but one got the memo and one didn't, through their moms or their dads.
Which happens.
Exactly.
No, family secrets exist.
Exactly.
I mean, like, watch any movie, like,
where did Azriel find Truth Teller? Where'd he find it? It's a made weapon, right? It allows him to wield it, and you'll learn more about the powers of Truth Teller and Presidency, which basically, like a made weapon, it will only choose specific people to wield it.
Okay.
And Azriel is able to wield it. But for some reason, Nesta's blades hated Rhys, right?
Right.
Hated Rhys when he was trying to take it out of the scabbard with his power. It was fighting him. So I'm just like, do we have a little mix up here where, like, maybe the wrong child got the crown? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because Azriel's like, oh, I'm nothing, and I'm so scarred, and I'm blah, 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 blah. And I was like, Azriel, you are literally more moral and politically astute than Rhys. And I don't know how that is. Right. But it is.
I think that's a really interesting thing, too, about, like, the wrong member getting a crown. Like, it reminds me a lot of, like, Daenerys Targaryen and, like, Jon Snow.
Yeah.
Because he was the real heir, Not that I'm a big fan of, like, heirs to begin with. Like, I mean, I'm an American. I'm like, we're voting. Imagine if, like, me in the night court, I'd be like, we're taking a vote. Who are you?
here's the thing with the history again, because I have a little bit of trouble following it, but I'm sort of putting the pieces together. But we also know that at some point, which again we learned in Crescent City, but at some point, the bloodlines swapped from Moore's direct line to a cousin line, which was Reese's line. Because Moore's direct line used to be the High Lords.
I think that Moore has a few reasons to be the betrayer.
Oh,
and this is one of those things where could you blame her?
But there's also the thing where it's like, is she the red herring? Because she could also be the red herring,
She wears red.
So obvious.
That's all very literal. You know what I mean?
Red herring. Yeah.
Right. But that's the thing. That's interesting. I don't know who the betrayer is going to be. I almost hope it's Rhysand.
I that's what I've been saying. So
just to really
I have such a hard time after reading. So after I read Crescent City for the first, I've read those 3 times now. I'm on my 4th reread of CC3 just for all the fucking lore that is packed into CC3 that goes with ACOTAR. But after CC3, I was like, it's fucking Amryn. It has to be Amryn. She has all these secrets. She's not telling people what she knows versus what she doesn't know, but then she suddenly knows this in Crescent City, and she never told anybody. But then I go back and I'm like, but what did Moore know? Because notably absent from Crescent City 3 is Morgan, Lucian, and Elaine.
Really? Oh my gosh, I have to read these books.
Yeah. So, Moore's still in Valahan. She's still in Valahan?
Yeah.
7 months after 7 months after Crescent City, she's still in Valahan. It's 7 months after Crescent City.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
I mean, after
right, that's what I'm assuming.
They basically say, Nesta slew one of the Daglin's contemporaries 7 months ago. They're talking about Lanthus. So she killed Lanthus like 7 months ago. So it's been about 6-7 months.
Oh my gosh.
And Moore's still in Valahan. Oddly enough, the truth person isn't there when this is all going down. Elaine and Lucian aren't there. Where are they? Are they off in... See, my little theory is that they are in spring. And I think that ACOTAR 6 should be a tandem read, like EOS and Tower of Dawn.
Yeah.
It's happening at the same time, and I think we should get Lucian and Elaine's perspective of what's happening in CC3, where they're like, helping spring, whatever, heal, right? Along this timeline. But I'm like, it's the fact that it's notably those 3 that are specifically missing. The person that could tell everyone the truth if somebody was lying is not there. The seer, which another big thing in Crescent City is, what blinds an oracle? Maid powers, starborn magic is what blinds an oracle. Okay. And then Lucian, which obviously, Lucian is very clever. He's very astute. The fact that he's Elaine's mate and he's also not there is a little weird, especially because the Autumn Court comes into play pretty heavily in Crescent City. And Autumn Court is, the Autumn and the Day Court are technically a big part of it, kind of. You'll know what I mean. But they're not in Crescent City 3. So I'm like, we have to get a tandem read, because there's just chunks and chunks of this lore missing from what we actually get in Season 3 and what people know and what they don't know and what are lies and what is the truth. And it's so convoluted.
It is.
like why are these people notably missing?
I'm reading, I'm finishing up the Throne of Glass series, and I'm saying to myself, I gotta reread ACOTAR. But I gotta read Crescent City first, but there's just so much wait a minute, what did I remember reading about that?
Again, why I read ACOTAR so much, because every little thing in Crescent City, which it connects to Tog too, but every little thing in Crescent City connects back to all of the lore from ACOTAR, Akamath, Akawar, and Akasib.
I almost think that she knew they were going to connect, so she made it on purpose.
Yeah. So it's like all the lore reconnects back to the history that we've already been told in ACOTAR. But it's weird because, as Rhys points out when he's saying it in Akawar about Fiona and everything, they only know half of the history. They only know the part that involves the king. And in Crescent City, they only know maybe a fraction of the part that involves the queen. So it kind of comes together, and you only have little fragments of this whole truth until a hologram appears and tells us everything. Not really everything, but her part of the story. And it's just like, so Azrael knew a little bit about this, but Rhys knows nothing about this, but this part opens for Nesta's powers, but this won't open for this person's powers. And it's like, it's so just unfinished. And I think that's why people hate CC3, but I think it's on purpose, because we have people missing. We have courts missing that are involved. We have, half of the fucking history that we're told.
Yeah. I'm very
so convinced it has to be some sort of tandem read because we need more of this history. But then there's also the fact that Bloomsbury is making her put all of the gods' information in a new trilogy. Another connection.
Oh, okay.
So Sarah J. Maas is contracted for a new trilogy titled Twilight of the Gods, which is going to be about the gods planet that we've heard about that's destroyed, where, you know, the Bone Carver and all of them come from. How they said, like, oh, it's just, you know, a speck of dust now. We don't even know where to locate it, right? And so the Bone Carver says this, and then a couple of the big bads from Crescent City says this, oh, we couldn't even find it if we wanted to because it's just dust now. So I think that's going to be about all of the destruction of the gods planet, how they ruined their own planet, how they moved to the other planets and became all these monsters, basically. And that's all of the history that we're missing that wasn't in Crescent City or Akatar. And I don't know whether I'm, like, glad that this is all going to be explained at once in a trilogy, or if I'm kind of upset that she had to take it out of the two major series, because, I don't know, I do think it might have done Crescent City more of a service to have more of that history and maybe not leave us with as many questions. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm still excited for the trilogy. I do think it's going to explain a shit ton that we still don't know.
Right.
Half of our questions. I do think that Amryn is going to be a huge part of that. I think we're going to figure out everything about her from the Gods Planet, because she said, "Oh, my boss was a wrathful god."
Right.
To smite twin cities. I think Hybern and Amarantha and the big bads from Crescent City and the Valg, I think they are all the same species. I think they are all gods, bad gods, you know, that's why they destroyed their planet. I think we're going to see the crossings from that planet to each of the major series planets. And I just think that, I don't know, I think it's going to be great because we really need to know.
I know. I'm like, I just got to find out what's going on at this point.
I'm like, I think we're going to see Amarantha again because she misses writing Amarantha. Yeah. That always scares me when she says that.
Imagine. She comes back from the dead. Actually resurrected too.
Yeah. She's been asked. She's like, they've been asked, like, oh, who do you most, like, miss writing or whatever from any series? And she's always like, oh, Amarantha. She was delicious. Like, I miss writing Amarantha. And not to keep rambling, but I kind of have a personal thought where if Koshi's a death god, if he is a death god and he isn't one of the Valg Kings, but I guess they could be one and the same. I kind of think Koshi is Orcus from Tog, one of the missing Valg King looking for Maeve. I think he's turning people into swans to try to find Maeve. She's already dead.
Okay.
But I think that during Koshi's war, if Sarah really wanted to kind of darken the series with, like, a major war where people die and all this stuff, I think she would use his death powers. I think she could resurrect a good chunk of the people she's already killed and turn them on, you know, the people. Turn them on the Night Court, you know.
I would love that.
Because if you think about it, I think the biggest part of war, in my opinion, that can kind of give the other side an edge would kind of be psychological warfare.
Yeah.
So if you really want to fuck up the other side, you're going to want to fuck with their heads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in my opinion, I think it would be really cool if Koshi resurrected, like, not only Hybern, Amarantha, Claire Better, fucking all these fucking people that have died, to fuck with them. Because if you think about it, I give this as an example. Yeah. I give this as an example all the time, but there is an episode of Charmed. I don't know if you watched it.
I know what it is, but I haven't watched it.
It's one of my favorite series. But they have an episode where one of the villains brings back their, you know, innocence that they weren't able to save in zombie form. And so they have to make a choice of whether to kind of kill them again, like completely destroy them from any sort of, you know, afterlife or anything like this, or like let them kill them. And so ultimately, obviously, they have to destroy them again. But if you think about this, how fucked up it would be for, you know, Vera to kill Claire again, or for even Lucian to, like, kill Jasminda again.
Oh gosh, that would be
or Tamlin to, like, his mother, like, any of these dead people that have had a huge psychological impact on the people they left behind.
Or their father.
Yep. Papa,
you know, like
Nesta. Yeah. You know, people like that. It would be such a mind fuck if she wanted to make this war a huge, horrible thing. There are so many dead people you could bring back to fuck with our main characters.
I would love that.
Rhysand's mom.
You know, like an Army of the Dead, you know?
Exactly.
No, I'd love that.
And because Nesta already kind of has a bargain with the Cauldron to keep her magic from Akasif, like, she's not going to be able to make another one to bring anyone back, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
stakes are higher.
Yeah, stakes are higher. It's like, you got Reese's mom, you got Jasminda, you got Claire, you got Papa Archer on, you got all these fucking dead people, like Cassian's mom, Cassian Tanwin, if she's dead, like all these people that they loved, that they would have to like redestroy.
Oh my God.
I would love that. It would be
That's
awful.
sick, Mel.
Like, this is how I'm writing it in my crossover fic, because I was like, I have to get this out of my head. I started writing a crossover fan fiction between all the 3 main series. But I'm like, I want Sarah to write it this way as canon, because it would be a fucking mind fuck.
Yeah, that would be wild.
Like, because how else, I'm trying to think how else she can make Koshi, like, a huge villain, because Highburn was kind of a joke, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Amarantha was okay, but again, like, you're gonna give her a chance to win. Why? Just kill her.
Right.
You're a joke. And then Highburn was kind of like nothing. So I'm like, how else can she up the stakes so high that it's like beyond a doubt that Koshi's like the big bad, you know?
Right. That would be wild.
I was trying to think of like, I don't know, I can't really think of any other way she could do that.
That's a good one though.
Right?
But this has all been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you something that I plan on asking all of my guests.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite book or work or author? What's your favorite?
Out of like everything, or just Sarah?
Everything. Like, if you like your favorite book of all time.
Oh my God. I have so many. I'm like, all right, if I'm not reading romantasy, I'm a romance girly. I have a lot of favorites. Holy shit. Sarah Adams is one of my favorite authors. I love her romance books. I have a friend on Instagram, Erin Thompson, who wrote like a romance trilogy, like Each with a Friend, that I'm fucking obsessed with. I love those books. I think my favorite one is 5 Dates Between Friends.
Okay.
And oh my God, the main male is just like a cute little cinnamon roll blonde guy.
Aww.
And I love them so much. Mac, I'm like, I need a Mac in my life. So those. As far as Sarah J. Maas, controversial, but honestly, I think ACOTAR Book 1 is.
That's probably my favorite.
And people get mad. They're like, oh, the first book is awful and you have to trudge through it, and ACOMAF is where it's at. And I'm like, no.
Listen, if you hated the first book, you wouldn't have read the second one.
Exactly.
You know, like you just wound up liking another character. Like, right? you know, come on.
Like, personally, I hated ACOMAF just because, like, to me, which is going to sound harsh, but to me, it was like a retcon trash fire. Like, I just couldn't.
Yeah, it also just didn't make sense to me.
It didn't make sense.
Like, I think that was my biggest problem.
How
like,
fast she switched.
Right. Well, it almost seems like infatuation instead of love, right? And there's that question again, like, what exactly is love?
In her head, yeah.
And it just didn't feel like it made sense to me. I was like, okay, wait, what? Like, all of it was just confusing.
Yeah.
But, again.
It was so confusing. And then, like, I loved Akasif, not gonna lie, but I only love Akasif for the Valkyries. Like I said, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing Cassian die.
Getting the whole Cassian.
I'm like, there's not a single fucking doubt in my head that he's gonna die. Like, 100% to me, he's gonna die.
I think he's fated.
Everyone's like, why do you think that? Why do you think that? And I was like, let me redirect you to my reel, where I put all of the foreshadowing.
Allow me to list the ways, you know.
I know. Like, let me show you my highlights on this topic.
But this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I will chat soon.
Of course.